morning. Good morning.
I think they're still asleep. What do you think? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Oh, much better. We are members of the Sons of the American Revolution.
Woo.
Every one of us can trace our lineage, our ancestors back to people who fought and possibly died during the Revolutionary War period. As our musicians are getting prepared, in fact, it looks like they are prepared, we have a program to you today in which they will demonstrate some of the drumming commands that the Continental Army would use, as well as some general music that was common during the Revolutionary War. Cool. So we will turn it over to our compatriots that will look like they are ready. Gentlemen, left shoulder, arms. Right, face. Forward, march.
Woo! Yeah, give them a hand. Good morning, citizens.
Good morning.
As Bob indicated, we're here today to make a presentation on the very important role that drummers and fifers played during the American Revolution. We're members of the Mount Everest chapter and Kozar Color Guards. I'm Mike Coyner. I'm a descendant of George Michael Coyner, who served in Captain Andrew McGee's company of the 2nd Battalion of the Cumberland County, Pennsylvania Militia during the Revolutionary War.
My name is Kurt Liddell, and I'm a descendant of Abel Tanner. He served in Van Rensselaer's regiment, Niles Company, 2nd Rensselaer Battalion of the Albany Militia.
Huzzah!
Drummers and fifers were not entertainers, but specialists whose job was to telegraph commands to the soldiers in camp, in parades, and in battle by playing signals on drums.
Being drummers, we're going to concentrate on the part of drummers today, but fifers often participated with drummers in performing the various tasks required of them. Privates in the Continental Army earned $5 per month. Drummers earned $6 per month. We like to think it's because we were non-combatants. Now you will notice we're wearing red coats, and yet we're drummers with the Continental Army. Could anyone tell us why our coats are red rather than blue as our compatriots were wearing? It identified us as non-combatants so that the British hopefully would not shoot us. And then
we also could be quickly identified by any commanding officer with the red coat. They would know and then provide signals to us so we could provide the orders to the Army.
Cool.
In June 1777, General Washington complained that the music of the Army was in general very bad. He ordered that the drum and fife majors exert themselves to improve it, or they would be reduced, demoted, and their extraordinary pay taken from them.
George Washington went on to say that specific hours would be assigned for all drums and fifes of each regiment to attend them in practice. And I've read that generally the drummers would meet at about 5:30 in the morning, some distance from camp to practice, and then they'd come in and wake the troops up.
During the war, American drummers carried locally produced drums. Philadelphia was one of the many cities with a thriving instrument production sector. Plunkett Flesson and William Campbell were well-known drum makers in Pennsylvania. Drums could be purchased for 50 shillings in 1775.
As you'll notice, we're carrying what's called a rope drum. These were generally made of some local wood like maple, or generally not oak because it's too hard. The heads were generally calf skin, some type of animal skin, and the snare started out cat gut, but any kind of gut took over after that. You can see they're not metal like most drums are today. The ropes were generally hemp, and they used to tighten it with these pig ears on the side. We tighten up the ropes so you get some tension on the head, and it sounds a lot better. Von Steuben implied in his chapter, Regulation for the Order and Discipline of the Troops of the United States, that traditional signals were too well known to require explanation to anyone of the ranks of musician.
However, there was essentially no written music for drummers. Because at the beginning of the Revolution, we still considered ourselves British. Most of the music was the same as the British regulars. They were well-known songs of the time.
Fifers often prepared notebooks with their tunes, while the drummers were essentially taught the rudiments from someone else, from generally like the drum major or the drum sergeant. Many of the cadences were similar and could be played with a variety of tunes.
Drummers were instructed to practice 100 paces in front of the battalion at the hours fixed by the adjutant general. Any drummers found beating at any other time, except as ordered, shall be punished. Chapter 20 of von Steuben's regulations specifies the following camp signals, which were generally tunes played with fifes.
So the general was a tune that was beat only when the whole are to march, and it's a signal to strike the tents and prepare for the march. Then the march was for the whole to move, and then the reveille was beat at daybreak as a signal for the soldiers to rise and the sentries to leave off challenging.
The troop assembles the soldiers together for the purpose of calling the roll and inspecting the men for duty. The retreat is beat at sunset for calling the roll, warning the men for duty, and reading the orders of the day. The tattoo is for the soldiers to repair to their tents, where they must remain until reveille beating the next morning.
Now, as we indicated, there would be different tunes played along with the drum cadence for each of these. It would depend on what unit you were with, or maybe they would just get tired of the tune, so they would institute different tunes during the war. Now, we're going to give you some samples of the various things that soldiers would hear during the day for the various duties they had. The first, if to go for wood, it was to be a pulling stroke followed by a 10-stroke roll. The problem is we don't know today what a pulling stroke was. It could have been von Steuben's terrible pronunciation of an English word. You may have had an obscure German artist, we don't know, but we just assume it meant a flam. So that's what we play today. So a flam and a 10-stroke roll. So if you're in camp and you hear that drum cadence, you know and you're on the wood duty, you'd go get wood for the day. The next command is to go for water. This is 2 strokes and a flam. Next command is to turn or face to the right. This is a single stroke and a flam. Y'all getting all this? You remembering it now? The next is to turn or face to the left. This was 2 single strokes and a flam. These different beats were to start on the right, so the first drummers would do it, then followed by the whole army. Generally, a quarter hour before time of beating, the drummer's call would call the drummers to assemble before the colors of their respective battalion, and as soon as the beat begins on the right, immediately taken up by the whole army, the drummers beating along the front of their respective battalions. As a drummer, that would sound like heaven to me.
The position of a fifer or drummer was not necessarily an easy one to fill. Musicians were recruited just as soldiers were. As indicated earlier, they were expected to learn the many tunes played in the Army, from popular songs like Rosalind Castle to practical beats such as Water Call or Roast Beef.
Drummer and fifer positions were often held by older or younger recruits. Boy musicians, while they did exist, were the exception rather than the rule. A study done by John U. Rees showed that the average age of drummers was about 19 years of age, while the average age of fifers was 17 years of age. The range in age of drummers and fifers was about 10 to 35.
The younger, smaller volunteers were assigned as fifers, as the instruments were easier to carry. The drums could get very heavy during a long day of camp duties or marching, and the younger, smaller musicians were often unable to carry the drum for extended periods of time. There are records of fifers transferring to drummers during the course of their enlistment, but there are no examples of drummers transferring to fifes.
Can anyone tell us what was the most popular song during the American Revolution? What do you think? Come on, hazard a guess. Yankee Doodle, exactly right. Yankee Doodle predates the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution. The tune is thought to be much older than the lyrics, being well known across Western Europe. The melody may have originated from an Irish tune all the way to Galway, as the second strain is identical to Yankee Doodle. Interestingly, the term doodle first appeared in England in the early 17th century and is thought to be derived from the Low German dudel, meaning playing music badly, or dodel, meaning fool or simpleton. The macaroni wig was an extreme fashion in the 1770s and became slang for being a fop. Yankee Doodle Dandy implied unsophisticated misappropriation of upper-class fashion, as though simply sticking a feather in one's cap would transform the wearer into a noble.
The song was a pre-Revolutionary War song originally sung by the British military officers to mock the disheveled, disorganized colonial Yankees with whom they served in the French and Indian War.
We will now present a brief sample of Yankee Doodle with the appropriate drum cadence. We've been unable to recruit a fifer, so this is as close as we can get.
Any volunteers? According to an article in the fall 2025 edition of the SAR magazine, Sons of the American Revolution magazine, written by Scott Kittler of the Kentucky Sons of the American Revolution Society, Chester is the second most popular song in the American colonies during the American Revolution. One explanation for the popularity of the song is its strong religious conviction, which aligned with the American view of the Revolution as a crusade. The word Chester comes from the Old English and Latin words for military camp or fortified position. It was widespread practice at the time to name tunes after a place that had nothing to do with the theme lyrics of the song. Chester was written by William Billings in 1770 and published in his songbook entitled The New England Psalm Singer. The songbook was the first book of songs completely composed in America. Chester quickly rose in popularity and became known as the anthem of American opposition to British policies in North America. Billings, a Boston neighbor, was a tanner by trade and was a self-taught musician, songwriter, and composer.
Chester actually was played in a couple ways, sometimes as a march, which would be a faster tempo, or many times it was just entertainment, perhaps on Sundays, so it would be slower. We're going to do our interpretation somewhere in between. Are there any questions? No? You mean we addressed every question you could have? No. Excellent. Thank you very much for your attention. Is the color guard prepared to return?
Left shoulder, arms. Forward, arms. Face. Order, arms. 15 to 20 minutes, we will demonstrate the various firearms that were common during the Revolutionary War, and we'll do a simulated firing of our muskets. Now, there were several different types of firearms that were used during the Revolutionary War. Some of us here had Brown Bess muskets. Well, thank you. Can everybody hear me now? Whoa.
Almost.
Step back. Step back. Step back. All right. This was a Brown Bess. A couple of us have a Brown Bess. This was a standard firearm of the British soldiers and also the Continental Army. It has a smooth bore, a small musket round. I have one here in my pocket, made of lead, and it was smaller than the bore, so these tended to be not very accurate. So that's why when you see reminiscences of battles, they get closer and closer, almost to the point where they're shaking hands, because the accuracy of these were not very, very good. So typically these would have an accuracy of about 50 yards. Beyond 50 yards, then you don't know what you're hitting. But at least when you fired them, you might hit the guy next to him, the guy next to him on either side. I mean, that's how inaccurate they were. Some of us had rifles. Well, let's go with Kurt, with Chip. Chip has this different.
This is a French Charleville musket. The French king gave about 110,000 of these to the colonists to fight the British. It's also a smoothbore weapon with a 69 caliber. So modern military weapons are either 22 or 30 caliber. This shoots a much larger bullet. It's also flintlock, like the Brown Bess.
They referred to the ammunition as rounds because they were round. That term has existed till today in terms of our ammunition, which isn't round, but they're still referred to as rounds. There were three things that came out of a musket. You'd put the powder in, and you'd knock on wood for luck that it would go off. You would then have a lock, a stock, and a barrel. If you don't have everything lock, stock, and barrel, you don't have a musket. And then if powder goes off and it doesn't set the powder in the barrel off, you just have a flash in the pan. So you're a flash in the pan, from terms from the Revolutionary War. And there's a small little hole that runs from the pan into the barrel. So have you ever heard the term, fire in the hole?
See the small hole there?
Oh, yeah.
You need to get fire in the hole to set off the main charge to fire the bullet.
The spark will then travel through the hole into the barrel, where it will light the powder that's in the barrel and therefore discharge the musket round.
Ignite the main charge.
Now, for anybody who had a Brown Bess or a French Charleville, they would also have the ability to put on a bayonet. Now, the other firearm that was common during that time was rifles and the fowler. The rifle and the fowler did not have a bayonet because it was a smaller bore. The rounds were much larger. They were much more difficult to get into the barrel because you had to really press it down, press it, press it, press it. But its accuracy was significant. So if I wanted to pick that window in the upper right-hand corner of that building, if I wanted to hit that window with a rifle, no problem. In fact, I could probably pick which corner of the window I would hit. That's how accurate rifles were. And those were typically handled by militia. Because the militia were hunting. Okay? So the militia would typically have the rifles or the fowlers, whereas the Army would typically have the Brown Bess, which is a less accurate device.
Hold on a second. Put the bayonet through.
How effective is the bayonet?
I think it's effective.
It works pretty well. The other thing is, these are what shape?
Pointed.
What
They're
shape
not
is
a
it?
knife like modern marine bayonets. The
These
Marine
are
Corps still
triangular
uses.
shaped. The reason was,
You can sew up a blade wound. You can't sew up a triangular wound.
Oh.
They were very much more harmful than a blade wound. And these were outlawed by a Geneva Convention in the 1870s.
The other thing the triangular blade did was made it stronger. So if we had a horse charge and I braced my musket, it would stop a horse.
Have any of you ever seen the movie The Patriot? And late in the movie, there was a part where Gibson basically got his musket down with the blade, and the horse stopped, and the rider went flying over the head. The horse saw that blade and said, So that's why the rider kept flying over the edge, and then what did he do? Yes, he got ready to stab him.
Ouch.
So that gives you, an idea of the value of having a bayonet on and stopping a horse charge.
They also could be used to cook meat over an open fire, which was pretty handy. And they were also really good for tent stakes. So you'd have maybe 8 soldiers in a tent, and you'd have 8 bayonets holding the tent down.
Hopefully when they got up in the morning, they would retrieve their bayonets. They might need it. So typically in a battle, you would find the militia would probably fire first because they have the accuracy, but they would fall back because they don't have the benefit of a bayonet. Because typically after maybe 1 or 2 shots, there would be the signal to charge. And so with the militia not having a bayonet, what are they going to use as a weapon? Club. That's about all they could do. Or maybe if they had a separate knife or whatever.
Or they just turned around and ran.
Which is common from that movie. Yes, from the movie The Patriot. They were always, the Patriot commanders would always say, well, the militia always runs. Well, that's one of the reasons for it. They couldn't protect themselves up to that point.
An emphasis on the rifle again. We talked about the inaccuracy of the muskets. These were good out to maybe 40, 50 yards. That was the extent, smooth barrel. The rifles coming from Pennsylvania could reach out as long as 200 to 300 yards on there. In a demonstration right after Lexington and Concord, Colonel Morgan brought up about 90 Virginians. Their demonstration in General Washington, so that he would allow them to stay, was to shoot a bullseye in a block of wood, 7 inches long, 5 inches wide, held between someone's knees, 60 yards out. And his men had to be able to shoot that 8 times in a row into the bullseye to be on hand. Their job principally, as we mentioned, the non-combatants wore a different color. I think the British generally took that to heart. We did not. The British soldiers were literally without a clue if they didn't have commands coming from their officers. So our job with the rifles was typically take out the officers, take out the musicians, take out the drummers, and leave with not knowing where they're going.
You're seeing some variations of uniforms here. I'm wearing a uniform that would be common with my ancestor who was in the militia. So this would be the common outfit that he would wear. Around 95% of all families in colonial times were farmers. So this might be what my ancestor would wear as he was doing his chores, farming and so forth.
Steve's would be a uniform more typical of the mid-Atlantic states and the Continental Army itself. Blue with a red trim on here. You'll notice the back. On several of these, we have a heart on the back. Who do you suppose might have sewn that on before we left home?
Why?
So mine doesn't have a heart. So if we're marching through town, that's a sign to the ladies that I'm available.
And these two gentlemen are very unique.
We are members of Washington's Life Guards. He handpicked the Washington Life Guards, and in 1776, our 2 ancestors were 2 of the first 80 taken into the unit. Our ancestors knew each other 250 years ago. We know each other today. Washington designed this uniform, and when he designed it, he said, the waistcoats or vests would be any color but red. Well, when they went to the tailor, all they had was red cloth. We are the only red colored vests in the Continental Army, and that became sort of the symbol of Washington's Life Guards.
Washington's Life Guard was the first elite military unit in the U.S. military. They stood as an example. When General von Steuben first started training the Continental Army in Valley Forge, it was with Washington's Life Guard. So once he got them trained, they were dispatched to the other units to serve as a model and an example of how to train and how to march.
But you notice their colors are very unique. Buff colored. You notice that? How do you suppose they got that buff coloring?
The pants were white when they were given to the soldiers.
Dirt.
They dyed them using coffee.
Oh.
So the colors of the pants varied depending on what coffee they used, or how strong it was, or how long they dyed the pants. But they were buff colored because it matched the trim on the uniform, as George Washington's uniform was that way also.
That's Folgers on the end.
So what we'll do in the remaining few minutes, we'll demonstrate the loading and firing process, simulated firing process of our firearms.
Well, before that,
Yes.
to be an infantryman, to handle a musket, you had to have at least 2 teeth. Does anyone know why you would need teeth? Well, if I'm holding the musket in this hand and I have my cartridge in this hand, how do I open the cartridge?
With your teeth.
You gotta bite it off.
Yeah.
So one of the requirements was to have 2 opposing teeth so you could open the cartridge.
Wow.
Very good. All right, shall we do a simulated load?
Sure.
All right, gentlemen, let's go to port arm. Half-cock firelock. Acquire cartridge. Open cartridge. Prime pan. Close pan. Cast a bow. Load barrel.
You pour the rest of the powder, and then you put in the paper, the ball, the rest of it.
Remove ramrod. Rammer. Ram cartridge. Return cartridge rammer. And you don't want to lose this, because without this, you're not going to have an effective. Yes. Left shoulder arms. Present arms. Full cock. Firelock. Take aim. Now you want to watch. You have the flint here with the steel here. You're going to watch for the spark. It might be hard with the light. Ready? Aim. Fire. Did you see the spark? That
Let's
spark
try one more.
lighted. Yeah. All right. Let's go to full cock. Close pan. Ready? Aim. Fire. So the spark lights the powder that's in the pan, that goes through the hole into the barrel, which lights the powder, and then, sends off the musket round. Now, if you're really good, and the Continental Army as well as the British Army would be very, very good, you could load and fire in about 15 to 20 seconds. 15 seconds, let's say. If you had a rifle, it might take 2 or 3 minutes, because you have to keep packing that round down, because it is so tight. It's so tight. So that's why the militia had a more difficult time being up front, because it took so long to load their rifle. But for the regular Continental Army, 15 to 20 seconds. Think you can do that? Oh, we did it, what, in about 40 seconds we did? We were slow. Any questions from any of you folks? Yes, ma'am.
Where do you carry all the balls, all the ammunition?
Cartridge box.
And how many?
You carry 20 cartridges in the cartridge box. After you've shot all your cartridges, you'd get the command to fix bayonet, and then you'd work on clearing the field. So a little bit different than modern weapons, where you might have 20 rounds in one clip. All you'd have is the 20 rounds with you.
Cartridges typically newspaper or another type of paper. We'd carry a wooden dowel, and you just roll it into a tube, fold the ends over, load your ball and your powder, and then twist off the top. Load it that way.
You know where they got a lot of these musket rounds? Well, there was a statue of King George in New York City. They took it down, melted it, created what, 400,000 musket rounds.
Wow.
Thank you, King George.
Yeah. Yeah. I have another question.
What's
How heavy are your jackets? How heavy are the uniforms?
100% wool.
heavy wool?
It's warm.
And if it rains, it gets even heavier.
There were individual battles where more soldiers in uniform died from the heat than from the combat.
And if we were here yesterday afternoon,
Yes.
they would be sweating more than I would because I don't have on my hunting frock,
Yeah.
okay, which is very, very heavy.
And underneath was all linen,
Yeah.
so you're hot to begin with before you put a winter coat on over the top of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there only the one uniform for like summer and winter?
Nope, same uniform year round. You'd be issued a uniform.
Okay.
Now, together with the Army, there often were wives or children or young ladies who would follow the Army around and cook and repair the uniform, provide additional services that would be needed for the Army. Not as combatants, but as support.
And there might be, in a regiment of 600 men, there might be 300 women and children following that unit because they're all attached to men in that unit. And they were oftentimes relatives and companions and friends from one local area. They didn't pick people from all over the world. They were from one town might have a company, the next town might have a company, but they would all know each other. That's another reason why people were very truthful. Lying back then was really not cool.
Because if you had hearts on your uniform and some young lady would come up, word would get back to the missus. She might be in the back of the line.
And if you had the hearts turned down, it got even worse.
They just went for the heartless guy.
And the tricorn hat, this was the standard hat of the day. Much like caps are today, you know, gentlemen back there, caps would be the standard today. In colonial times, the tricorn hat was the common hat of the day. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there something different with his ribbon?